this is going to be a little bit weird. But on the upside, if we lose you within the first 5 minutes and you're looking at your phones or you're sleeping, we won't know. So that's a good thing. This topic is so timely. And I think Ms. Ruchi mentioned new media. And I know this is something that I've been battling with for the last couple of years, where we kept urging people to stop calling it that, because there is no such... It's okay. Someone's not on mute. Okay, I'll come back. That's all right. Yeah, so I was saying, how we keep even just the language and the words we use, and we call it new media versus traditional media. And that's just not even 3 years ago. It's like now. So I think I'm also a bit of a podcast nerd myself. So this is very close to my heart. And I just hope that, when we get into it, I looked at some of the questions beforehand. They're great questions. And I hope we have a robust discussion. It's an amazing panel. I just hope that at the end of this discussion, there's something of real value and actual actionable takeaways that whether it's your first year or whether you're on the cusp of sort of getting out there and getting a job and passing out and entering the industry, I hope that it's a very challenging time. And at the same time, it's a time where, if I was starting my career at this time, I don't know if, it would be a very, very difficult thing to think of. But at the same time, I just think there's so much opportunity, so much change is happening, and so many industries which will pivot, and new industries. So a lot of industries will die, and that's a fact, and I'm sure of that. But don't want to be a downer here, because the truth is also, whenever there's something like this, like when we look back at this, maybe this year or these few years in history, we'll realize that a lot of change, there's so much change that's happening, and that also always means so much opportunity. So just keeping the pace and keeping that hope, and also staying on top of things. So there's new media every day. It's just really great to be here. So thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, ma'am. Our next guest is Mr. Bhaskar Shitole, the Senior Vice President of Creative Services at Prime Focus Technologies, where he heads end-to-end responsibilities with accountability for revenue generation and profitability, strategic planning, expansion and relationships, and excellence in creatives, productions, and operations. He is responsible for driving business and creative excellence in the production of short and long-form content for brands, broadcasters, and OTT platforms. He is an experienced media professional with over 18 years of demonstrated history in driving creative services and content production businesses to profitability and sustained growth. During this period, he has worked with National Geographic Channel, Discovery Networks, ITV, BBC World, NDTV, Disney, The Hunger Projects, Star Network, MTV, ZTV, Viacom 18, and Doordarshan. He has also built new business verticals, set up teams from scratch, and is currently managing a team of 7 cross-functional resources with over 500 people. Welcome to Comvisage, sir. I request you to share a few words.
Thank you. I think, like Juhi mentioned, I did feel like slinking away at this point in time, but I'm very excited to be here on this panel. I think it's a great time for both content creators and audiences alike. The sheer range of stories that are being told at this point in time from the India platforms and from the global platforms is incredible. We're being able to explore completely new dimensions to creativity, and also user-generated content is seeing a tremendous growth as well, which means that overall it is helping add to the overall content ecosystem. And that's great, because there are people who are coming out and sharing content of their lives, their experiences with us, and that helps the overall ecosystem in a big way. Hopefully some of them will enter mainstream media and also add to the great stories that we see on the big screen or on our personal screens that OTT platforms are making happen today. So I think it's a great time to be in. I know the pandemic has been a bit of a bummer for all of us, but I'm sure we are all going to come out stronger from this. I think the content industry is definitely going to take some learnings from this and ensure that they're going to weave that in with some interesting ways. So yeah, I think it's a fun time to be in overall. Brands are definitely going to be taking advantage of the technology interruptions and disruptions that we're seeing, and the new ways in which content is going to be and stories are going to be told. And I think what I'm truly excited about is the new feedback loop that is being made possible with technology. It's a great time for two-way communications and maybe even transmedia content. So yeah, I'm excited.
Thank you, sir. Next, we have Mr. Sonal Dabral, a creative consultant, writer, director, and keynote speaker. Over a 30-year career, he has led agencies to creative glory in 3 different markets across Asia. He has been a key player in the development of Ogilvy Mumbai, Kuala Lumpur, and Singapore. At Ogilvy Mumbai in the 90s, he helped drive the agency from creative anonymity to India's #1 agency. He did the same with the Kuala Lumpur branch, leading the office to become the most awarded in Malaysia and one of the region's hottest within just 3 years, and in the process winning Malaysia's first ever gold at an international award show at one show. Ogilvy Singapore was next, where he led his team to become #1 in the creative ranking in Asia and the 3rd most awarded office in the world at Cannes Lions 2007, a first for an Asian agency. He returned to India in 2011 to head Bates, followed by a stint at DDB Mudra. In 2017, he returned to Ogilvy India as the Vice Chairman and Group Chief Creative Officer, and in 2019, he took on the additional role of Chief Creative Officer of Ogilvy Southeast Asia. A popular speaker, Mr. Dabral has spoken at major festivals and events like LIA, Rebels and Rulers Branding Conference Romania, Dubai Links, Spikes Asia Singapore, and AdFest, besides numerous engagements across the globe. Welcome to Comvisage, sir, and I request you to share a few words.
Hi, everybody. Thank you very much for that nice long introduction. Maybe I should have given a shorter CV of mine, but thank you very much. And it reminded me of the long time that I've spent, and that actually brings me to one point that out of the lot that you'll be going out into the big bad world of marketing and advertising, many of you, out of few people who'll be getting into marketing and advertising, I pity you. But out of whoever is listening today, there'll be some who'll be content creators, who'll create their own stuff, and you guys, I envy you because starting from the time that I worked on Fauji as an actor, there used to be only one serial on air every night, so that became a hit, right? Also because of Shah Rukh Khan. And because of the subject, then I came to Ogilvy India, and there used to be just ads going out, top-down advertising. You put one good-looking commercial, nicely produced commercial on air, and your product started to sell. And then came internet, and now the place is so muddled. And then came these, which became the kind of a bane of all advertising people and marketers, which is the creators. The crowds became the creators. And some of those creators are actually better than some of the talent that you find in the advertising agencies and marketing departments of clients. So there's tremendous amount of competition, tremendous amount of excitement. And let's talk a bit more about it as we go into the panel discussion. But from where it all started, from where marketing, advertising, where it started, to branded content coming in, and to now a place where everybody is a creator, and people are getting better at it every single day with so many different platforms, so many different screens. It's exciting and a scary proposition at the same time for any marketer or advertising person. Let's talk about it a bit more when we get onto the panel. But it's really exciting to be here today and talking on a subject that is so exciting and so energetic and so full of possibilities right now. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Our 4th panelist, Mr. Tarun Katyal, is the Chief Executive Officer of Z5 India. Mr. Katyal has a rich professional trajectory in the field of marketing in the entertainment industry. He has been instrumental in changing the landscape of consumer tech and entertainment in India. His years of experience include his illustrious stints at Ogilvy and Mather, Star TV Network, Sony Pictures Entertainment, Big FM, and Z5. Elaborating on his role at Z5, he has helped the OTT giant to reach prestigious milestones such as the Most Impactful Debut Award at Pitch Top 50 Brands 2019 and OTT Platform of the Year Award at ProMax 2020. He has also been the creative force behind Hippie by Z5, India's first homegrown short video platform. At his personal front, Mr. Katyal is an established TEDx speaker and also the chairperson of the Internet and Mobile Association of India. Welcome to Comvisage, sir, and I request you to share a few words.
Hi, good evening. It's really great to be amongst friends and amongst a whole community of students who are going to go out in the world and create new landmarks in content, in data, in technology, and most importantly in storytelling. One part of my resume you didn't talk about is that I started my career under Jose, and he was quite a teacher for me when I kicked off as a management trainee. So
I think if I could just come in, we must all know, I think apart from we working together, during the early days of SIMC Media Management Vertical, I remember we were just setting up and there are times we needed VFs to happen. We would just shoot a mail to Tarun. I think Indrani ma'am, I remember, you would just shoot out a mail to Tarun and would immediately give us references, and we had some great people coming from his team. You remember Tarun?
Correct.
The radio days.
Correct.
We had some good guys coming from Delhi. Yeah. Thanks, Tarun. Yeah, go ahead.
Now that we are talking about it, in the morning, our morning speaker was one of our ex-students, Tarun, and she must have been in a batch where they did the national radio meet that year in Symbiosis.
Oh.
And you were one of the speakers, and she was remembering that today morning. Yeah.
It clearly shows how old I am. So
Let's not talk about me again. Yeah.
But it's always great. I've loved being with the student community. And yes, I've taught at MICA for many years and at ISB. And actually in the morning today, I was designing a new course for MICA for their leadership program. And Bhaskar Das was getting me to do some of this work all over again. And I was telling him how it's always exciting to be with students because they come up with what you're kind of not thinking. You kind of become legacy. And I agree with Juhi, the part of the legacy is when you start still call things new media. And when we are at OTT, we cringe when somebody says new media because at about 70 million or 100 million users, this can't be new media anymore, right? But that is the reality. I think we all have grown up from where we came from, and we still see it very differently. For digital natives who are coming out of batches today, this is not new media anymore. This is just the only media they possibly have seen. And much like what you guys have put out, which is voice, video, vernacular, this is the three cornerstones or pillars of what really the expansion of the next billion users of digital in this country is going to be. When we launched our platform, we launched it in 14 languages about 2 years ago, and we knew that we needed those many languages. There's 6 more than what YouTube had in the country, primarily because we knew that we needed to reach out to the next billion users in this country. We also knew that, just not vernacular won't do. Voice was very critical because discovery of content for everybody, for the old and the very young, is not the type way. It's a typeless environment. It's a tap-only environment. And these are things which are native to, to people who grow in the digital world. They're not looking to type. They're not looking to do stuff like we did for many, many years. When my kids grew up, and they're 7 now, they've never used Google search with type. They've only used Google search with voice. They don't understand that you've got to type in Google search. And that's not the way they consume it. And they're used to having Alexa or Google Home talk to them more than their own parents. And maybe the parents are just too busy, but earning for the IB education that you put them through. But the point is that the world has grown up into a very different environment that we came from. And it's going to be exciting to see what happens over the next couple of decades. It's going to be, what we learned of BC and AD and all that, this is going to be BC and AC, before COVID and after COVID. And we're going to really look at the digital transformation that businesses are going to go through, much like what Juhi and Sonal spoke about, really before COVID and after COVID. So happy to be here and happy to hear and share some thoughts.
Thank you, sir. I would now like to invite our moderators, Dr. Nilesh Gokhale, Faculty Mentor of Corporate Interface Team MBA, and Professor Josra Charakkal, Adjunct Faculty for Communication Management, to take over.
Sure. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening to our esteemed panelists. Me and along with me, Professor Josraj, who is my colleague, we will, as I said, try to moderate this panel. We will more or less try to facilitate the questions. And I request our esteemed panelists to allow us some freedom of simplicity, because our questions will be very reflective of what our students are curious about. And in the later segment of the panel discussion, we will certainly have questions being taken from students. So I'll start with the broader theme of this entire Comvisage and, of course, the panel discussion. And allow me that freedom, because as an academician, I would start with macro and then we get to the specifics. A beautiful documentary by Economist released, I think, a few weeks ago, maybe a few days back. It talks about how deglobalization has now become a very prominent and recognizable phenomena. And it attributes this entire deglobalization to three major factors. One, of course, is the subprime crisis and the Lehman Brothers, etc., that story. Second is trade war between US and China, which is now turning out to be a Cold War. And third is, of course, COVID, as it significantly mentions. Now, it, of course, also keeps a comment saying whether all are man-made, but that's a different discussion. So these three together have actually put a lot of obstacles in the entire juggernaut of globalization. Now, on this context, if you look at the whole socio and political and cultural dynamics which are happening world over, what's happening is nationalism and protectionism are also on the upswing in major economies of the world. So on one hand, we have this entire sentiment of being kind of either protectionist at times, in the guise of nationalistic sentiment on one side. And on the other side, there is this juggernaut of globalization that has already started way back. Now, so coming now to the panel theme on this context, would love to know from our esteemed panelists as to, do you think, because there is a lot of power in communication, but do you think that video, voice, and vernacular, let's say regional, these three put together as extremely potent tools of communication, has or shall have the power to break these cultural barriers which are going up almost every day? And I request Tarun if he can start with the discussion.
Juhi is going on. Come on, Juhi, please.
No, I was going to say who's going to go first. So please, Tarun, you go ahead.
So I agree, Professor Gokhale, that video, voice, and vernacular are the way to break into the next billion users in this country. And it's kind of very simple, but and it looks very simple from the surface, but it's not as simple as that, right? While we will get the voice ecosystem right and be able to build platforms for voice, you must realize that most systems work on machine learning, right? But even today, most machine learning algorithms can't do beyond English and Hindi. So the core of most digital platforms, which is natural language processing, is not going beyond English and Hindi just yet, right? You can do a little bit of Tamil, you can do a little bit of Telugu, but to be able to do personalization at scale, to be able to do machine learning at scale, and to be able to understand content, read content, recommend content, and not just through metadata, but just for the content in itself, right? You always need natural language processing at scale. And while the world has achieved that very, very well, or significantly, because the world is really divided into three big languages, which is English, Spanish, and Mandarin, our world is very, very unique. Our world is not only in 14, but almost 25 languages and dialects from there. I can tell you we struggle with so much of this, because the only way we can do personalizations or recommendation today is through either semantic, through metadata, but that metadata needs to be all fed in and written, but cannot be read from the content. The only way we can do personalization is through collaborative personalization, which always takes away the serendipity logic of showing people stuff that they haven't seen, and to be able to bring them into the pool of content that they could like. So these are all very, very big challenges. And that is why, yes, vernacular and the machine to understand vernacular is going to be the way forward. And coupled with voice discovery, coupled with video, is going to be the way we get into the 100, the next billion users, and get into the next 100 added on million users in this country. I hope I was not too complicated.
I can add more complication to that. I think before we get thanks, Nilesh. Before I answer the actual question, I just wanted to sort of question the question a little bit as well, because yes, there is deglobalization, but it's not all bad. For some industries, especially if you look at e-commerce, so people are looking at shorter supply chains and production coming back, and industries growing back, and the economy getting more robust. So because China is no longer an option, I look for a shorter supply chain closer to home. I mean, that said, obviously nobody wants a divided world where we are living in our little echo chambers and silos. So and for sure, absolutely, I think that's why I said this is such a timely topic, because thanks to not only the internet, but fast internet. So this is 5G streaming speed internet. And if it was a couple of years ago, we wouldn't even be talking video, right? And the very fact that I was looking at some stats recently, and this might be from 2019, so do fact check it. But I think around 75 to 85% of all video consumption in India is vernacular. Not just English or Hindi, not just Hindi, but regional languages vernacular. And therein lies a lot of the problem and the challenge, because there is definitely a market for it. There is an audience for it. And when that happens, brands have an opportunity to use it. The fundamental problem is back to what Tarun said, which is it comes down to a question of production costs and scale, right? And if there's no algorithm that can translate and create this content in 17 languages, who cares about the demand? So, and can you do it at scale? And how many? So I don't know. I mean, Kunal will remember this, and when we used to shoot versions and versions of. So I remember, like, this is before anything, like hundreds of years ago when I was a junior copywriter, we used to work on Horlicks. And Horlicks' big success was that they used to shoot every film in 6 versions with full lip sync, not even dubbing, like little details culturally. For Calcutta was separate and Tamil Nadu was separate. And we used to go nuts doing all the masters by the end of it. But definitely vernacular, video, and now more recently voice. The other interesting thing, however, going back to Google search, what I think Tarun was talking about, as kids search on Google with voice. The other big benefit of video is that you no longer have to be literate in many ways. Even though India has a huge literacy rate, and it's surprising how high it is, no one is reading recipes anymore. You'll just watch a video. You can learn anything. You can be anyone. So in terms of not just storytelling, but aspirations, opportunities, and the world that it opens up for you, because it's streaming and it's easy and it's there, that's absolutely incredible. And when you see stories, there's something powerful about stories, because you see other people as human beings. It's very different to read an article about Syria versus seeing something on Netflix, which is a show and it's about parents worried about their kids, and it's the same stuff you feel. And that humanity, I think, that's the power of how video and storytelling, and sort of, even if it's in different languages, will unite and sort of bring the world together. I don't know if that complicated things more or.
Yes. So what really, if you look at video, voice, and vernacular, it's the vernacular part that really, really excites me, because if you look at, as Juhi was saying, with 5G, with social media coming in, it became very easy for subcultures to crop up, for like-minded people to connect. For example, if I loved cycling, or if I loved let's say, wildlife. Earlier, before the internet, it was very difficult to find who else loves, who can I talk to who likes cycling, or so coming to not just these subcultures, even when it comes to vernacular, like-minded people, people who speak the same language, who speak the same idioms, coming together. I'm talking of even beyond languages. I was called for a kind of a web chat the other day on a platform called Being Uttarakhandi. So I'm from Garhwal, right? And you realize that, and through that I realized that there are so many Garhwalis, so many people into different kinds of field that one never knew about, So that I'm just giving as an example. Now, what excites me about this vernacular part is that on the negative side, it is possibly making us more tribal and more partisan, in terms of our personalities. But on a positive side, imagine the kind of stories that will be told now, because you'll have to hone in on to the right insights of that particular people. What idioms those people use, what language do they use, how do they live, how do they behave, So it won't be like from, as Juhi was talking about earlier, when we used to do ads at times, there were times that we didn't shoot many versions. There used to be one version and we used to dub, thinking that, as long as Hindi chalega, uske baad baki languages to dalte rahenge, dub kar denge. But not anymore, because everybody has got the power to respond. Everybody's got power to, kind of come together. So each of these, so to say, vernacular, therefore, becomes so important for any advertiser, marketeer, content creator, and Tarun obviously will vouch for that, how big vernacular storytelling is going to become. Very, very, it's already becoming, but in the future. So it won't be just English and Hindi anymore. But as I said, what excites me is that better and better stories will be told as we go deeper into those languages, the idioms, and the behaviors of people, and not kind of paint everybody with the same brush and see everybody with the same filter, because that's when you get very cold and boring and flat stories.
Yeah, absolutely, Solan. Wonderful titles.
See, even on the content consumption side, what one is looking at is with the penetration of the internet and the way it's growing and the data becoming cheaper. We're looking at dubbing requirements go through the roof. Okay, and this is happening because people are wanting to explore content from other places and other stories that are happening in other parts of the world, and people want to see how people are living in other parts of the world and their own cultures and their subcultures and those stories coming out. So I think that there is an interesting possibility over here, both our own stories going outward and our stories from outside being consumed inward.
Absolutely. Wonderful inputs for us. Great value add. So I just have a question to build on this. Yes, there is a significantly positive and bright side to vernacular or regional content. While, of course, if we look at it from a brand's perspective, and let's for a moment stand at the position of a brand or a company which is trying to market and communicate the products. If it's a global brand, and if they go and if their adaptation levels are very high in terms of regional content, do not they kind of run a risk of diluting the global brand image? I'm sure that risk will always be there. But as people who have worked behind those brands, can you share your experiences with us as to how do global brands typically manage tweaking their entire communication to regional content?
If I may start the conversation on this, there will be positioning, or there will be ideas that can be adapted without much problem. There will be certain universal insights, but to truly connect, there will have to be ideas that go absolutely granular. Like, for example, we were in Ogilvy. I worked on Amazon out of our Bangalore office, and right in the beginning, there used to be Amazon as a brand. the way they became went really granular, and told stories. So, for example, every time one did a shoot for, let's say, a big festival sale, there used to be a different story written for North India, a different story, adaptation of the same idea, but a different story, different kinds of dialogue, different kinds of casting. Because it's not just that you translate the dialogues and put in both the films. It has to be ground up different. And so, as I said, for any global brand, it's really, really important to go local, to really, really connect. And especially in today's day and age, when as I said earlier, through the power of social media, everybody has got the power. Whether somebody is living in Bombay or somebody living in Hapur or Moradabad or any place that you take.
Hey, I'm gonna disagree a little bit just to make this interesting. I think not disagree, but I guess a little nuance to it, which is my belief is that obviously from a strategic perspective, if you are a brand manager and if you are the marketing head, the first question really would be, what's your DNA? Why do people buy me? I mean, if you go all the way back to basics of marketing and say, if I am, for instance, a Nike or an Adidas, and the reason why kids love me is because I'm cool and I'm from here, then there's like, if you think of it like this is the home and this is who I am, that's the soul of my brand, there's the DNA of my brand, and that doesn't fundamentally change wherever I go, right? Having said that, you might look at like a cross-media strategy where, for instance, you might do you might still choose to be American or whoever, because that's who you are. And there's a lot of fakeness that can happen if you pretend to be say Gujarati when you're not, or so and social media will call you out on that in 2 seconds. So the authenticity with which you come across as a brand is really fundamental in today's day and age, and you have to be who you are. And if you don't have a claim to that, so whether it's someone coming and saying, oh, I understand this issue of blah blah blah, you don't, because you're not from here, we know that. So so that said, I think to Sonal's point, there's so much, there are some things that are universal. Storytelling is universal, and there are so many ways in which you can be yourself and who you choose to be as the brand's DNA. But for example, I might say, okay, I'm telling this big story, but then when I do local influencers on Instagram or TikTok or whatever, I'm going to have a completely local strategy, and it'll be local, celebrities or YouTube stars or whoever else, and it'll be a combination of that will give me relevance and connection, as well as sort of I retain who I am. I don't know if that makes sense, but I guess I'm just saying it's not as straightforward always, because to say every global brand must be local.
Yeah, but no, Juhi, to take your example, for example, Nike, right? The way they do, just do it across the world. When they came to India, they have done some really, really good commercials, which are very Indian. For example, in the traffic, people playing cricket on top of the bus. That.
I remember that one. Yeah.
Or even dudding the way it was done.
Absolutely.
It had the absolute DNA of Nike, but it was created for India with Indian stories. So
absolutely.
Or their 22 yards. That which TWT did, Sentinel. With just the photographs. Many of their films have been very, very and same. Just do it the same DNA, but done beautifully. So there are examples like that, and I think it can be done. Whatever might be your, if you just spend some. I mean, if you work hard like Nike does, I'm sure it can be done.
And if you do a good job of it, I think absolutely. If you do a great job of it and you can pull it off, and to your point, Sonal, that's what I was trying to say, which is fundamentally they're still Nike. They didn't change, but it feels Indian, right? And it feels right for me. But they're not saying I'm Indian. So
no, that I agree.
In some ways,
that I agree with you. that though, any brand will get found out.
You know, there's a feature of this that we're looking in long form content as well. So when when content is being dubbed now, when shows are being dubbed in across international languages, many a times we see requests for voice actors to be from the point of origin language. So if it's a Russian show and you're seeing the Russian show being dubbed in English, they prefer to have voice actors who's speaking English in Russian accent to provide
Nice.
to ensure that there is authenticity over
Sure.
there. So there is that international element and the point of origin element that is coming into play. But I think Sonal, what you said and what Juhi said, I think both of them coexist at the same time.
But this word that came from Juhi, then came from you, and I also use that, which is authenticity and authentic. It's a very oft-used word right now, but it's so important, because right now, again, the crowd has the power to, the moment they smell it, they can immediately reject it, and troll it, and reject it, and not buy your story or not buy a product or brand, which earlier people were not able to do.
Indeed, absolutely. Tarun sir, your word on this?
So, interesting point of views. In my world of long form storytelling and short form storytelling, actually, you've got to stay true to the language you make the show in. And even if we have a great show that we think will not cross boundaries because we dub it, we rather subtitle it than dub it. We do give people an option of the dub, but we insist on taking the subtitle option because we do believe that, much like Sonal said, the authenticity in long form storytelling is very, very key. You must feel that character is in its natural form and the natural surrounding. Only then can you relate to the character, to the challenges, to the issue, and to the society that you are portraying and the world that they're living in. So I think what we do and what a lot of others have done is to try staying true to the language we're in. And we had a big hit last year out of Tamil Nadu, a show called Auto Shankar. And you'd be surprised the language it was a hit in. We had given it a dubbed version in Hindi, Bharat, and we do a lot of work in dubbing, so we're not going to take that away. But the original Tamil version is what the world liked. And most Hindi and English-speaking guys rather see it in subtitles than see it in dub versions. And the reverse is also true. A lot of our Hindi shows get viewed in South India and in Russia and in Poland and in different parts of the world because we are in about 190 countries in subtitles rather than in dubs. So, yeah, that's
absolutely. Absolutely. So it's authenticity of the brand. That is what it will absolutely boil down to. Yeah. Over to Jose. Jose, would you like to take up the further questions and continue the discussion? Jose, you need to unmute.
Thanks, Nilesh.
Voice, video, vernacular. The voice was missing. Sorry, bad joke.
Yeah, thank you, guys. I thought we will touch upon. See, we're an extremely sensitive country. There are those cultural sensitivities. There are regional nuances. At this point, we are going through an amplified sense of nationalism. The brands, global brands, pretty much at play. As content creators, producers, and marketers, just want to get a perspective in terms of how do you manage the balance, and what do you see the mix? How does it pan out in the future? Maybe we can go with Juhi to start with, and we can have Sonal, Bhaskar, and Tarun. Thanks.
I'm gonna pass. Actually, it's a great question. I haven't lived in India for a while, so I wouldn't be authentic if I started. I'm gonna pass it over to anybody else first, and then I'll join in.
Okay, let me go. Okay, Jose, I'll go.
No, you go. I was asking.
No, I wanted Jose to rephrase the question.
I was about to ask for the question again. You go.
Yeah, even I was going to ask the same thing.
See, I think as a consumer, we need to balance across so many filters, the cultural sensitivities. There are those regional nuances, and currently, I think certain things get factored in with a certain amount of nationalism happening. So while creating content for the consumer, how do you get the balance in place, and what are the challenges, your perspective in getting those mixed right?
So I answer this question every day. So let me answer it, because currently in the midst of writing the self-regulation code for the
that's right,
for all the OTT platforms, where one of the bigger issues is about religious sensitivities, national sensitivities, what is good content for the country and for our society and for everybody at large, right? The one key thing, Jose, is that we must realize that there are going to be diversity in storytelling. There is not going to be a good story until it's going to be able to challenge your legacy thinking. It's unless it's going to be able to challenge your status quo. And for that to happen, you have to allow yourself and the society at large to see, hear, and accept new concepts of the way the world must be seen, the lens that we must apply to relationships, the lens we must apply to religion, the lens we must apply to gender sensitivity, the lens we must apply to caste and race and everything else. Unfortunately or fortunately, the digital medium has actually become the voice of diversity. It's also become the voice of the platform to be able to call out stuff that most Indians either didn't have the opportunity or didn't have the courage to do, right? It's and there are goods and bads of all of that, right? There is trolling on social media. There is all the troll armies, and you can't, and it becomes a vitiated atmosphere. All of that said, it is digital media that has allowed the voice of the diverse Indian to come alive, or the diverse global citizen to come alive. And yes, as storytellers on curated platforms, it becomes our responsibility to be able to balance creativity and sensitivity. But the one thing we keep telling everybody is that as long as there is nothing obscene and there is not truly anything seditious, you should be able to accept a contrarian point of view in a story that is told.
Thanks, Tarun. So keep pushing the envelope as much as we can without affecting the...
I want to add, actually, Tarun, that's fantastic. And thank you for starting us off. And I couldn't agree more wholeheartedly, because even from, if you're a marketeer, if you are in an agency and you're making recommendations to brands, it's almost like your responsibility to tell some of these stories that are not often told. And status quo, and to question and challenge that status quo is in some ways, there's so much talk that's happening these days about brands and purpose. Well, that's the way brands can be involved in purpose, by having like an action bias, by making these stories that never get made. You look at Bollywood or Hollywood or anything, right? Like, there's a formula and it clicks, and then everybody makes that same movie for the next 5 years. The point is that there are these stories, and whether it's about minority groups or it's about women's empowerment and things like that, there's so much that needs to be told, and that can be great content as well to watch. And there's always so social media is great. It gives you diversity, but it's also a double-edged sword, like Tarun said. So you will have, but as a brand and as content creators, you have to ride that wave, and that you have to be on the cusp of pushing it. Otherwise, why bother? You're just making more of the same, and then there's no point to it, really.
Yeah, and I feel, and Juhi, you are so right. And I feel that OTT platforms, when they are telling stories, are actually taking more, yes, what do you say? They are pushing the envelope much more than brands and advertising agencies, because I think maybe they feel that the stakes are higher. A brand not getting sold, a brand getting, a product not getting sold, not being able to move the boxes, the crates, or not afraid of not losing your customers, So, but we need to do that. I think brands and marketers also need to constantly look for stories, whether it's bringing diversity in, whether it's pushing, taking up issues that have not been taken up, earlier in advertising. Because how we all know that, like any of the stories in films and in OTT platforms, advertising storytelling also has got a huge potential to bring about some kind of a change, you know. So, and that should not be overlooked.
You know, I want to come in and I want to tell you, you know, there are 4 or 5 stories that we told right at the start of our journey at Z5 that changed our future completely. The first story we told was on Karanjit Kaur, which was Sunny Leone, and what makes somebody a porn star. No, everybody thought we were quite crazy, but I thought it was really a human story, and we didn't use porn as an angle at all. So everybody expected porn, but we were telling a human story of a person who goes through the journey and why do they go through the journey and what really happens there. And you know, you'll be surprised. The first time we asked Sunny Leone, why did you become a porn star? And she said, I just wanted to. It is just, it is a teenager's view of getting rich and getting popular. And so we never use the line of sympathy or poverty or having to do it for the reason at all in the story we were telling. And we wanted to be true to it. And everybody told us that, listen, if you're going to tell a story of somebody becoming a porn star, then you've got to give it that sympathy angle. And we said, if she doesn't have a sympathy angle, then why are we going to give it one, right? But these are the kind of stories that need to be diversely told. And because it doesn't have a sympathy angle, we have a very poor impression on the youth of the country. And all of that was, you know, how people actually told us not to do. The next story we told was a story called Kafir. It is a true UN Human Rights Commission story where a girl comes into India by mistake through the Kashmir border. And she tries to commit suicide in a river which goes between India and Pakistan, comes down to India, gets arrested because everybody thinks she's a terrorist, and gets raped in an Indian prison, and has a child in India who's now an Indian and she's a Pakistani. She gets released to go back, but the child can't go back to Pakistan because the child doesn't have Pakistan citizenship. And we were panned because we were showing a Pakistani woman getting raped by an Indian cop. But that was just the truth. And you know, in all voices of nationalism, they will tell you that these are all the wrong stories to tell. But these were our most successful stories ever told. And we continue to get awarded and rewarded and well monetized on stories like this. And I think that is the real crux of trying to create diverse storytelling and true storytelling. We have 3 rules. We have real, relevant, and resonant. And we believe that every story must go through that lens. Sorry, I get a little passionate about these things.
Thanks, no, Tarun, I think what you spoke about, you know, content creators going boldly down the contrarian point of view, I think that's music to the ears of any content creator. So yeah, I fully support that. We did a small little campaign for Brook Bond Red Label. This was It's Time to Unstereotype, where we celebrated India's ethnicity in that video, and that got a lot of likes and retweets. But what I've also seen is that, you know, brands prefer to sort of take the route of something which is safe and not go down to something which is highly controversial. And one understands that they're not sort of out there to court controversy and, you know, unnecessarily take down something over there. So, you know, maybe Juhi or Sonal could come in over here. Do you think that brands would want to take in something which is more on the edge along the lines of what, say, Tarun described? Sorry, Jose, I'm just taking your question for a second.
Yeah, I mean, one would do it keeping in mind, obviously, also the brand and the product. In terms of that, it's not a force fit, you know, that you're not just trying to push the envelope because it's cool, you know. I mean, I remember that girl dancing on the cricket field for Cadbury's Dairy Milk commercial. On the face of it, it was a very simple story, but at that point in time, it was pushing the envelope of this girl coming in with this wild abandon, you know, dancing and doing things that she really wanted to do. So in that moment, she was actually reflecting the ethos of the whole India at that point in time, because 91, you know, with economy opening up and everybody feeling finally confident about themselves. Or for example, when I was, even before that, when I was in Delhi, when I just started my career, when lines used to be very proper, the taglines of brands used to be very proper. And they used to be all in English. I'm talking of what, 86, 87 at that time. And I was we had worked on this full campaign for this new chips that we were pitching for. And there was one little boy who said, in my asking him, how do you buy chips? And we had done this full campaign, looking for fun beneath the wine, very proper line we had done. And the way that boy said it, the way that I go to the market, one little Sardar boy, Sikh boy, very cute little boy, he said, I go to the market and मैं तो उसको बोलता हूँ कि अबे वाला दे मुझे, right? And that immediately something happened in my head to say that this attitude should be the disrupting attitude. Let's disrupt taglines. And I wrote Humko bhi nahi maangta. And the time that I wrote it, I didn't know how wildly popular the line will become. And it became popular because, again, it was pushing boundaries of a different kind. It was pushing boundaries of language. It was pushing boundaries of... So you are absolutely right. Brands have to constantly look for pushing boundaries, but also see which are the areas that they can push boundaries in. There'll be brands that can take on much more. There'll be brands that can, but in every little way, every time you push a boundary or push the envelope, it succeeds. The success is yours. So,
yeah.
And sadly,
both iconic ads. Sorry.
Yeah,
please.
both iconic ads. I think sadly, however, if you have to call a spade, and to be absolutely perfectly honest, the stakes are very high, and there are very few brands that are fearless, and understandably so. And this is the reason why we're in such a challenging time right now. Independent content creators and UGC, etc., is far more interesting. It's far more provocative, far more. I mean, I don't want to sit and watch an ad anymore. Why would I? It doesn't tell me anything interesting or new. Yeah, and we've worked with, I think I won't name clients' names, but we've been in tons and tons of meetings where we have brilliant things rejected because of simply just lack of courage, and the risks are way too high from their perspective. Having said that, when you look at a good brand that has consistently done it, and maybe this is not an India example, but we were talking about Nike earlier, what Nike did when they first signed up Colin Kaepernick and when he took the knee, before anybody else did it, and they signed Colin Kaepernick, they made that ad, and it was authentic, coming from them. And they were after that, every other, I don't know how many brands have done Black Lives Matter and everyone's printing t-shirts. But that's not brave anymore, because they know, but they weren't the first ones to put the stake in the ground and say, I stand by this, right? And they did it. And when you do, the wins are huge too, so I just feel bad for those brands that don't feel that in a country, in a democracy like India, that they need to sort of tailor what they put out to a point where it's just safe. And yeah, so it is what it is.
Thank you, guys. Great inputs. I think the good news is the content makers are willing to push the envelope. The brands might continue to be cautious to a point. I think, yeah. Nilesh, you want to get on with the since.
Sure. So, Jose, we shall take up that point
Sure.
which we discussed about expenditure, ADX, which is going up. Would you like to take that, Jose?
Yeah. See, you guys might be pretty much familiar with the latest KPMG report, and one of the highlights was OTT, digital and OTT will take off from next year. It will actually overtake the mother of all media, television. Your sense on the pandemic effect, both in terms of business implications and in terms of, as some of you said, there might be the content itself might undergo some change. Yeah, Tarun, since Tarun needs to take off, we can ask Tarun to go in first. And
so, Jose, I think this is music to my ears, right? Like I said, there'll be BC and AC. So AC obviously looks better than BC. Yes, I think digital has come of age for two reasons. One is obviously digital consumption has come of age, and it's got serious scale. And people have recognized the fact that they themselves are now digitally inclined to make transactions happen. And so the platform-to-platform navigation makes people do this. They were always using social. They also want to use digital. And they also have realized that digital and digital video has a great role to play in awareness interest rather than just bottom funnel conversion, right? And they want many digital video platforms that scale, but OTT platforms have come and changed that. Beyond YouTube, now you have enough options to be able to do great video advertising, achieve scale, achieve a huge amount of awareness and interest, top of funnel metrics for yourself, and then use social and display advertising to be able to do the bottom funnel conversion for yourself. So that's really where the world is moving. The other thing that has happened very, very differently is that, in the world of post-COVID advertising, the advertising agencies have themselves realized that they have to make different and personalized creatives for different cohorts and different kind of consumers. So the personalization that was happening only at the publisher's end has now moved to happening at the advertiser end also. And MarTech automation, end-to-end MarTech automation has led to investments in personalized advertising getting created, albeit not at an n equal to 1 level, but at least at a cohort level. And I know that Juhi speaks a lot about this because she's worked at doing all of this at Facebook and others. But I can tell you out of our own experience that we today run our entire advertising from our consumer data platform into our recommendation engine, into personalized advertising, which is automated into Google, Facebook, and all other affiliates. And that's the only way we run this at very, very small level cohorts rather than one large mass advertising that used to happen.
Thanks, Tarun. Do we say bye to you now, or will be here for a while?
I'm going, but thank you so much, and thank you, Sonal, Juhi, and Bharat. Bhaskar.
Thank you, Tarun. Nice to see you again.
It was great to be with
Hey,
you.
Tarun.
Thank you.
Tarun, lovely seeing you again.
Thank you, Tarun. Thank you so much.
Thank you so
Tarun.
much. Thank you.
You want to say something?
Yeah, thank you to Tarun. This was like amazing. And I wish we could have him till the end, but there'll be another time, I'm sure. Thank you so much.
We'll call him over, yeah, physically.
Yeah.
Thanks, Tarun. Yeah. Juhi, Sonal, Bhaskar, you guys want to take it on? Juhi?
So now?
Yeah, so I mean, one point that again coming from the advertising storyteller point of view, that while big ad agencies were still looking at telling big TV stories, big budget, big TV stories, there was this revolution happening, which was platforms like Juhi's Facebook and
my Facebook,
Instagram and YouTube were making these, I mean, obviously software programmers, designers sitting at the back end quietly, they were making these tools, and every 2 weeks a new update coming with a new tool in our customer's hand, in our consumer's hand. So while we are dreaming of these big stories, which will be put on TV, there were these creators, the crowd, the consumers who had these tools in their hand, and they became much better than us advertising creative people at those tools, and you suddenly see that there are these creators, whether it's on YouTube or Instagram, who are creating such content which at times is actually better than, in terms of creating fast content, in terms of creating cheap content, they are so much better than any of the advertising agencies right now. And that's where we are great storytellers. I mean, I don't doubt that, right? We work with big budgets, we tell nice stories, and we are into craft and all that. But what we all need to now do is, how can we do also quick? How can we do fast, but do it in the way we've been doing long form and in the way we've been doing big budget productions, which is do it well. And that's the only way we'll be able to, or the other way to do is, which is another thing that us advertisers have still not learned properly, is to how to best use these creators who are out there, like if you, although now T-Series has got the largest following in terms of YouTube subscribers, but there was PewDie, or what's his full name? PewDie. He has some 107 million subscribers, and where do the brands compare? Asian Paints, which is again makes such great advertising. Hindustan Lever makes such good advertising. Their subscriber base is 300,000 followers, 900,000 followers. So this is the competition out there when it comes to social media is of a different level for advertisers.
Yeah. I mean, just building on what Sonal, great points, all of them, I think, and just building on that, I'll throw some numbers. Again, please fact check, because this may be 2019 data, and post-pandemic, for sure, it is way higher. One thing certainly in the pandemic is I know how a lot of, whether it's OTT or social media, right? It's how you measure success is time spent. And time spent on Facebook or on Netflix or Z. Now that Tarun's left, I can say that, I'm sure. Must have, I don't know, I don't have the number for it, must have gone up through the roof. I know that share prices for Facebook have just in the last 6 months have gone insane because of it. So the fundamental problem is that people want to watch stuff. So you have a captive audience, and we were talking earlier about cheap internet, fast internet. Did you know that every day there are 4 million 4 million hours of YouTube video content that are posted? Okay, there's 67,000 Instagram posts that are posted every day. There's 300 million pictures that are posted every day, and podcasts are relatively new. You guys were talking about voice. There's 30 million episodes of podcasts right now, if you just want to go on and listen to anything, right? Just think about that. That's like, you're drowning in like, and because of this, it's available to me, and my attention span, that's even the worst thing, right? So compare this now with what's happening psychologically and behaviorally to human beings. Kids don't even listen to you beyond 4 seconds. I'll be surprised if anyone's still on the call right now as we're talking, but 8 seconds, we used to use this statistic a lot. We used to say, oh, it's the memory of a goldfish, or whatever. The attention span of a goldfish is 9 seconds. And now human beings are at 8. Gen Z is at 2.5 seconds. So you lose that in 2.5 seconds, right? And the temptation is to think, oh, well, then let me front load everything and catch your attention quickly and make short fast. And, like what Sonal was saying, which is, yeah, we're great storytellers as advertisers, but how do I compete with this speed and this agility? And but I fundamentally believe that it just means you have to tell better stories. You have to tell, it's not that you have to do it in 3 seconds, but you have to tell even better stories, because that's the competition. There's so many options I have. So why would I sit and watch something that's not holding my attention, or that's not giving me something new or teaching me something new? And a lot of us are not pivoting fast enough, and especially brands and a lot of content creators even. And the other thing, I think we still stick to our old formula when the world's already changed. And I think Sonal mentioned this very interesting point about, content creators and how to leverage them and use them, since they seem to know what the hell they're doing. Maybe, while we figure it out, maybe we can get them on board from a marketing perspective. And that's, sorry, I have no solutions, only problems. But that comes with its own complications, because if I'm a client and I'm going to spend money, I want to know how I can measure it, how it's actually impacting my business. Is it really delivering more sales for me? So I've got this dude who's got like 5 million followers on Instagram, and sure, he's plugging my brand now. Did it make a difference either to my brand equity or to what people think about my brand? And beyond just reach, right? We all think of, oh, he's got 5 million followers, so they saw it. Great, spend the money on anywhere and you get 5, you get that reach. But what is it doing fundamentally to make an impact for your brand, for your business? Is it actually driving sales? There's no real way to measure, to truth be told right now, so, or if there is, I'd love to hear it. So that's a tough one, because a lot of clients will say, a lot of marketers will say, yeah, I've got this influencer, it's got 5 million followers. Great. Show me how much profit, how much did your sales improve in the last 3 months since you hired this guy? Very difficult to see an attribution or a correlation between the 2-3 things, right? a little bit of a doom and gloom here. Sorry about that. I'm going to be a bit more positive.
No. Good. Very good points.
Yeah, I think, Juhi, there's something in what you say, and I think there's a lot of interesting things in what Sonal also said earlier. I think we are looking at a time when brands need to start really working on, on crafting those communities that they were building. I mean, it's something that started really early. I think was it Sunsilk with Gang of Girls or something? I think that was really long time back. Yeah.
Oh my God! Yeah.
Yeah, but I think if you look at a lot of brands now, I mean, whether it's the Harley Davidson, and it's sad that they're leaving India, or if it's the Bullet Riding Club, or if it's the new, the photography clubs, how they've been leveraged by the Nikons and the Sonys and the Canons and the Fujis of the world, or if it's the MI community that's happening. There's a lot of community building, and I think it's time that brands really leveraged the fact that there's a lot of UGC content out there, and people are making that content and somehow bring them into the larger conversation over here. And what we'll have is a very large set of micro influencers that maybe you don't even need to pay for, but they're loyal to the brand and they're sort of going ahead and pushing your messaging. I'm not sure how one is going to measure revenue and sales out of it. I think that part of the puzzle still needs to be solved, but it's definitely going to be moving the numbers overall. This is something that we are trying to work with some of our partners that we engage with. And I think this is a transmedia content creation problem, and it's very exciting. And I think it's definitely something that we as content creators need to look at, about how a piece of content that needs to start from one medium can travel to another medium and start building conversations that are emanating from the central piece and have a life of their own as they keep growing, and ensure that the branded communication is starting to become bigger and bigger.
Sure.
That's a good thought.
Communication which
Good
can
thought.
be platform neutral. Yeah. Thank you so much, guys. I think the point here is the audience is evolving, the expectations have changed, and they don't have the same patience as before. So and I think the digital habits have actually influenced the way how they interact with the other platforms as well. Yeah, so that's where I suppose there's a lesson for other AV platforms from here. Thank you so much, guys. Nilesh, you want to take on?
Yeah. So I have a very specific question now for Bhaskar here, and that's more on the voice side of it. Because while we speak about voice, we more or less, I mean, for my students and their understanding as well, we talk about voice assistants, we talk about podcast, maybe audiobooks. Bhaskar, can you share a case or an example with the audiences wherein the brand has got a lot of integration with voice and possibility of monetization out of it as well? Because relatively voice, we don't get to read much about the monetization side of voice platform.
I think voice is a phenomenal space that one has to think of leveraging. It's the one place which gets audiences during their passive time. When you're driving, you're in the gym, you're walking, you're going for a run, whatever you're doing. It's the time when video can't reach you. But can you use vernacular to your advantage? Since we're talking about 3 V's over here, yeah, of course you can. I mean, look at things like YouTube Music or JioSaavn. A tremendous penetration that these guys have got. So yeah, there are immense and more monetization opportunities. Plus, look at Amazon's new experimentation with Audible Suno. I think the results are still to be called out, but I'm quite excited about it. I've been a big audiobook fan for a very long time, and I've been a long time Audible subscriber. So I think I'm excited about seeing what Suno does for people. Yeah. And even podcasts for that matter. And Juhi here can maybe add to that. And I heard that she's a big podcast person. But look at what Spotify did for podcasts. Yeah, I think it brought the fire and the zing back to it.
That the Joe Rogan experience.
The Joe Rogan experience. The Joe Rogan experience. Yeah, the audio buzz.
And another interesting one is that Netflix is doing a television series of this really hit podcast, which began life as a podcast thriller, Homecoming, and now from a podcast thriller, audio thriller, it's now becoming a Netflix television series with Julia Roberts playing the main role. So
that's interesting.
So
Amazing.
So see where
That's interesting.
podcast has got a huge future. I mean, voice has got a huge future. We didn't talk much about it today, but
yeah,
it's
absolutely. So I think we have started getting questions from audiences. Sorry, yeah. Sorry, Julie, you say something.
Sorry. No, I just quickly, just to ask, I was going to tell Sonal, we can catch up after this if you want to swap podcast recommendations.
Oh,
but
we...
I think to Bhaskar's point, so I think the original question, which is the opportunity for brands to tell great branded content or to leverage, how can you leverage voice, whether it's audiobooks or podcasts? It's literally like radio production come back in many ways, right? And good podcasts are well produced. They're really well produced podcasts. They get huge followings. There's some ways in which I find like when you listen to someone like whether it's Joe Rogan or whoever, and he makes a recommendation, it's a combination of an influencer plus an ad, because it's the way the radio DJs used to speak. It's like an advertorial. It's not really an ad, right? And so you're a little more open to it. There is a lot of authenticity to it, I feel. And if you do that right with the right personality and the fit, there's a lot of opportunity there. But yeah, again, with branded content, it's difficult as well, because you remember the story, but you don't remember the brand often, and then it's like, great, it was entertaining, but I don't know who it was for. So that's a bit of a fail. But it's fascinating to see where it'll go and how brands can leverage more and more. I do think it's a smart way to do niche targeting, because there's a very specific interest. Like there are some podcasts that, like Joe Rogan has a particular audience. There's another one called No Stupid Questions, written by the guy who did Freakonomics. And that's a very specific audience. So if you want to reach those people as a brand, then it's a great way to find that fit.
And
remains to be seen.
And one other thing that will happen is also by habit, when people actually hear podcasts. So whether they're out on a walk and therefore again, marketers will have good opportunity to actually do these targeted communication, something that fits in the context of a walk, or fits in the context of taking your dog out for a walk, or fits in the context of you stuck in a traffic jam, So
absolutely,
I guess
True. That's creative. Already brainstorming. But from a creative perspective, though, such an exciting, I don't know, I'm old school, so I've always loved radio because of, just the theater of the mind and what you can do with great voice advertising. I just hope that comes back because we've lost that in the last few years.
Yeah, so Joy, I'll just pick up from your last line, and that reminds me of one of your interviews. I mean, you did an interview. Sonal did an interview with you in 2017 at Cannes, if I'm not wrong.
We did live.
It was a very crisp about 20-25 minutes, and it ended you asking Sonal what is future of advertising, and he mentioned that it can't be boxed. You can't box creativity. And now, almost 3 years from that, if the same question we asked, what would the answers be?
So now,
what was the answer? I'd said you can't.
Yeah, you mentioned you can't box it. That time you spoke about AI and VR. I think those were steps.
Yeah, true. And I would still reiterate the same thing, that we are getting the opportunities are now millionfold, as are the challenges. Opportunities of telling stories in different screen, different collaborating opportunities. But whether we collaborate, whether we do our own storytelling, whether we do it in 5 seconds or 30 seconds, great stories need to be told. That will be always supreme. I mean, everything else, whether targeting, personalization, everything goes out of the window if you don't have a good story to tell. So I'll still reiterate that you have to have that power of storytelling. When Nike did that, Dream Crazy, which Juhi talked about, that was a great story which was told beautifully also. So So that's what my answer would be. That it's a very crazy times, challenging time, exciting times. But one thing that one should never ever forget is that at the end of it all, they might say content is king, but actually idea is king. Will always be.
Right. Absolutely. Thank you so much. Now, audience's questions have started pouring in. So I'm quickly moving to the audience's section now. Just to save time, what I will do is I'll read out the questions. And if time permits later, the students can quickly come on the screen. Ananya Sharma, Ananya, if you can just come on the screen, I will read out the question for you. Ananya's question is for Juhi. There has been a significant shift in the patterns of consumption of content by youth of India. We prefer more authentic and real stories which are value driven. And then why are brands reluctant to showcase the change? The stakes are too high, but considering the patterns, can brands consider changing their lens? I think Juhi spoke about it more or less in the beginning. Juhi, would you like to just address that question?
I would like to ask the same question. Quite honestly, because it's I think it's, if I was to think about it, I guess break it down. I guess it's a question of, it's like sometimes it's not just brands. Brands are complicated organizations. So little bit of boring reality from like when you get into the real world and start, brands have regional structures, global structures, approval matrices, blah, 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 so it's easy to say that we should move and start changing and doing this kind of storytelling that resonates. And it's hard though, because there's a lot of bureaucracy, there's a lot of red tape, there's a lot of jobs at stake, there's a lot of egos at play sometimes, both at in marketers, in marketing organizations, as well as within, and so now I don't know whether he agrees or not, but within the industry, in advertising, in production houses. So, there are people who stand.
I totally agree with you, since I'm out of it now. So.
I'm out of it too. So it's easy for me now. So I actually can fearlessly say this, that I really just think there's a lot of, I guess, inertia and a lot of not acceptance of the fact that change needs to happen. And that said, there are some brands who are already starting to do really good work. And I'm glad to say that content is not, like we talked about this earlier, which is, if you look at some of the content that is being made by independent content, by OTT platforms, etc., is better than movies coming out of Bollywood. Like it's so well written, the storytelling, it's powerful, it's fresh, it's new, the crafting, it's well made, production quality, like that stuff is, and again, that's the point. When you get used to that, why would I watch this? And then in the middle of that, you have advertising, and advertising is really tough because I need to sell you something, right? That's, otherwise I'd be in the entertainment industry and I'd be writing for Hotstar or whoever, right? You, as an advertiser, your job is to market a product, and that's a balance, which is you wanna tell great stories, you wanna provoke, you wanna make better culture, and you wanna do all of those wonderful things, but at the same time, you have a job to do, which is drive brand and drive sales. And so I have a lot of empathy as well, because I'm from the industry, so I'm not saying it's all wrong, but it's hard. It's hard. I hope it improves and changes.
Indeed. We will move to the next question quickly because we are running dearly out of time, and my apologies to the audiences. We might not be able to accommodate all the questions because some of the questions have kind of been addressed while the discussion was on. So the next question is from Rajeshwar. Rajeshwar, you there? This is for the entire panel. How much of retention span of the consumers would be affected considering that there is increase in content? So I believe he means content consumption, and if there is a correlation between content consumption going up and affecting attention span of the viewers.
Sorry, I didn't understand the question clearly. Could you?
Right. Rajeshwar, is this what you mean? The content consumption going up leading
Sir,
to...
I was not very articulate in phrasing that. I meant with respect to ads, and I believe Juhi ma'am answered it earlier, like when she was describing the attention span of the consumers.
Sure. Next one was from Navya.
I mean, I can...
Yeah. Please, Juhi.
I can, yeah. I can only add to that. Juhi spoke about that low attention span, that's happening. And that again comes back to the point that we need to, as creative people, as storytellers, in whichever space, we need to be telling better stories, being more disruptive, so that we are able to get that attention, which is already so divided right now.
Absolutely. And to the point that it doesn't mean making shorter content necessarily, it just means making better content, because there's so much competition out there and you have to fight for someone's attention. So you better do a great job of it. Otherwise, why would I watch you? Like, think about it and tell me, when is the last time you actually searched for an ad because you watched it on, suppose, YouTube, and I was like, oh, I really want to go back. What was it? It was so much fun to watch. When is the last time you did that? And if you did, then those guys did a good job.
Absolutely. Thanks. So the next question comes from Sukrit, and I think we can start with Bhaskar. So this question is more about, we are discussing how content creation and storytelling has changed over the years. My question revolves around the dissemination part of it and the success metrics. Are we able to make sure that whether this content is reaching out to the right audience? If yes, how are we exactly measuring the success of an advertisement of a brand? The regular KPI like impressions, likes, and so on and so forth seems to be obsolete in the present times. Would like to know your thoughts on it. So it's more towards measurement side of the content and its effectiveness.
I think that's a very interesting point that Juhi made a little earlier, which is about, we may be getting X amount of likes or whatever, but is it really helping the bottom line? Is it helping the brands make sales conversions? I think from a branded perspective, that's where it all boils down to. From a more for a more narrative content or a more long form content perspective, I think we can still go ahead and use sort of time spent and time spent and the quantum of times that the content has been watched as a metric. I would think so.
Maybe I can just add a little bit on top of what Bhaskar said, which is absolutely right. So there are definitely ways in which you can measure effectiveness, and it depends on what did you set out to do. So the first question would be, are you setting out to just raise awareness? So I think Tarun talked about it when he was here about the funnel, and I don't know how many of you guys whether you study the full funnel marketing, but so if it's a top funnel thing, which is awareness, which is, hey, have you heard of me? I'm so and so, and this is what I stand for, and this is why you should buy me, right? Like, that's the very top of the funnel. And without getting into too much detail, then as you go further down, you narrow that down to people who are actually genuinely interested in buying you and will buy you, and that's a conversion, right? So it really depends on, if you set out to raise awareness, there's ways in which you can do A/B testing these days with this audience that saw the ad versus this audience that didn't see the ad. Was there you can measure all of this. Was there a change in awareness and change in persuasion? So there are many metrics. Short answer is yes, it's possible to measure almost everything depending on what you set out to do with that campaign.
Absolutely.
The one matrix that I set out to, not that I succeed, but one thing that I always set out to do is that it should come back to me from a WhatsApp group of my friends. My ad should come back to me. That's the ultimate in today's day and age. If you can do that, that's how I set to write my ads. I seldom succeed, but that's the best way to do it.
Yeah, I think that's a fabulous point, Sonal, that you make. That if it comes back to you, you've sort of completed the feedback loop. And I think what is also happening on the social media side, getting your audiences to react to the messaging that you're putting out. Maybe you see a lot of these tutorials that if you're posting something on Instagram or something, ask them a question and find ways to engage, increase engagement with your audiences, and so on and so forth. I think brands are increasingly using all those kind of tools to keep their audiences as part of the whole thing, and keep them as part of the ecosystem. We spoke earlier about building communities, and I think the increase of communities, what you're getting are loyal customers and loyal influencers in your mix, and as that number keeps increasing, I think that sort of definitely gives out another very tangible metric of how things are progressing.
Right. And a very related question that is a very, very wonderful question that has come from Kawalpreet. And this is about, the question is around continued relevance of content, right? DVD sets became obsolete in a few years because content consumption infrastructure and technology were altered. Do you see that happening in current forms of content production and distribution as well? In that sense, can content ever be future-proof? And Ruchi ma'am has added to this question because there was a technology part involved in this question, that with this TRP fudging controversy around in India right now, and even diagnostics, right? So we come back to questioning those methods of measurement, or even future content being future-proof. So we wish to know the panel's views on this. I mean, technology and the content that's valid today, will it be still future-proof? DVDs, Mother Bear was knocked out in no time.
No one's taking it. I'll go.
Yeah, you go.
It's a great question, and quite frankly, if anyone knows the answer to it, they should quickly go to a VC and get funding, because that's the I was listening to this podcast where with Reed Hastings, who's the founder of Netflix, and he talked a little bit, and this was a big moment where he pivoted, and the joke he tells is that when he first came up with the idea of streaming versus DVD rentals, and he was rejected, and he was told to buzz off by I think Home Box Office or whatever was the retail shops that used to sell those. And I bet those guys are now kicking themselves in the butt because they're like, damn it, we should have invested. And because they're out of business now. And look where Netflix is, right? So I guess it depends really on on how technology changes, and you have to really see into the future and ask people who are way smarter than me. But I don't know. Definitely streaming is going to get faster. If I was to take a guess, the model itself, I don't know, but whether subscription versus paid, that's a interesting question coming in the future. And what does that mean for brands? Like, if I no longer want to watch ads and I can avoid by paying a subscription, will that happen? What will that mean? And the other interesting, exciting thing, maybe not in the near future, but what I'm very excited about is VR storytelling, or stories where I can be in the story. Like, if I could be in, so I don't know if you, so Sonal might remember this, it won at Cannes a couple of years back, which was this, you could walk into Dali's paintings. So they did this VR experience where you could actually just be there and see the melting clock. And it was incredible, right? Like, imagine if that's the future of content, where I can see things from this character's perspective, and then I can turn around and or the other thing that comes to mind would be personalization or customization. So more like gaming. So if you think of the choices that I make at each decision point tree, if I choose this, then this happens, or if I choose this in the story arc, then this happens, right? So so the story would be different for you and different for me because of what we choose and who we are. So these are some random, completely just thoughts that come to mind, but who knows? It's the future.
Yeah, I mean, history tells us that technology will continuously keep changing storytelling. And as Juhi said, VR, augmented reality, another thing, AR, now you can start creating AR on your, Adobe is giving you that software. So that will also definitely come into our whether it's content or whether it's advertising, storytelling. But we'll just need to be smart and savvy to use it. I just thought of this very recent Burger King example. They, on FIFA, the latest FIFA that has come out, they bought a one of those really cheap teams, you know. In reality, they have put their brand on their jersey so that when that team comes on FIFA, right, they are now giving discount for people to choose the players from that team. You know, so it's a very interesting way of advertising your brand, you know. So that, and Burger King, you should, all of you should read some of the Burger King cases in terms of how they hack culture, how they hack technology in terms of reaching their audience. You know, it's a great example. So with technology, storytelling will definitely change. It'll just be, we'll all need to be really smart to use it correctly.
Absolutely.
I think since the question began from DVDs, I think what's going to stick around for some time at least, and I'm hoping, like Julie mentioned, if somebody's got a better idea, they should definitely run to a VC. But I think the cloud is definitely here to stay for the foreseeable future. I don't think that's going anywhere, because all the lovely things that we just spoke about, what Sonal talked about and what Juhi spoke about, are all being sort of, you know, brought alive courtesy the cloud and the tremendous streaming capabilities that we've got and faster internet that's happening. I think what we'll definitely see evolution is evolution in our consumption technologies. That's going to evolve very quickly. I'd love to see some holographic storytelling things happen, you know. I think Juhi talked about it from a perspective of, you know, where you can, you know, wear maybe a VR goggles and step into Dali's painting. I'm hoping at some point in time we could probably walk into a holographic chamber and, you know, be a character ourselves and sort of, you know, portray a character. It'll be fun to be maybe Pip in Great Expectations all over again and experience old stories a completely new way, or play Watson to Holmes or something else. So I think the way we sort of consume content, technologies for that are going to see the next bit of consumption changes. But I think from a storage and access perspective, I think the cloud is here to stay for some time.
Absolutely. My colleague, Dr. Ashwani, has got a question. Ashwani, sir, if you can just put on your camera and ask it direct to the panel.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask that, you know, these days everybody is flooded with choices. So there is a lot of post-purchase, pre-purchase dissonances there. Everybody is facing this paradox of choice. Now, can the marketers make the life of consumers easier? Is there any way, any technology, any philosophy? Yeah, that's my question.
It's almost, it's a complicated question, because so I'm guessing you're referring to The Paradox of Choice, the book, which is a great book, and that whole theory that, you know, the brain works in a way where if I see anything more than 4 cereal boxes to choose from, I'm just confused and I end up with nothing, or all of that. And in life, really, you just need 3 or 4 choices, right? And that's all you can deal with mentally. And that's when you can make a sane choice, and you feel okay after you've made the choice. You don't have any post-purchase dissonance. You don't feel like you missed out and had you got that one instead of this, right? And this isn't just with brands and with marketing. This is happening with everything in relationships. This is what Tinder is doing to relationships, right? And it's like, oh, this one. Oh, but I missed out on all the, you keep that feeling of FOMO of, you know, there might be somebody better. There might be a better choice that I could have made. So I really don't know, unless there's like less capitalism and there's some more sort of regulations in place and there isn't a free market economy. I don't know what brands can do beyond a point, but I guess some categories, like for instance, cigarettes and infant formula, now have these packages that are uniform packages, right? So there's no more, at least in some countries, there's no branding, there's no cue that you can use to convince me or to tell me. It's just all the same. You pick one. and it reduces that noise when you go in to buy, and so there's less choice. And I guess that's the only thing I can think of. So now, Bhaskar.
Because of one thing which has become hugely important for any branding exercise. Earlier, people used to go for brands, and now people are actually going for customer experience, and that's where this post-purchase dissonance so that you don't have post-purchase dissonance, that's where customer experience or customer service becomes absolutely key. One, like, why is Amazon succeeding so in such a big way? Is without questions asked, most of their things are returnable, So they are absolutely for the customer, and they are gaining so much more by this simple choice that they give you, because people have post-purchase dissonance. It's up to brands have to now think extra hard so that you don't have it, or you at least mitigate it, make it lesser, So that's why customer experience for any brand now is way more important than the traditional branding exercise that companies used to do.
Yeah. Sure. With
so
permission
much.
of, yeah. Thank you, sir. So with permission of panel, can we take 2 more questions if you're okay with it? We have overshot time. I realize that. Sure. So this question, I mean, there are 2 questions, but I'm just trying to club them into one. Karthik is asking, Sonal sir, for you.
Yeah, sure.
Would be your advice to budding storytellers like us? How do we prepare to get better at it? If you could share some mantras.
I mean, one is besides obviously observing a lot, reading a lot, because you should always see the mind as a bank where you are storing things, art, music, stories, museums. So that's on one hand. The other thing which I said in one of my talks earlier is that these days we keep Googling for everything, but for a good storyteller, it's very important to Google your own memories. All of us have very unique lives that we have led. All of us will have some really interesting stories that we can unearth. So I mean, we should talk to our mothers, grandmothers, uncles, brothers. Find out more what happened. Go back into your own memories. And you'll start to find that there are so many nuggets there of stories. So these are the 2 things that you can do. And for any storyteller, it's really important to be sensitive to a certain extent, sensitive in a positive way. That's one. And B, start liking people. Start being curious about people, about your friends, about the bosses that you work with, or the juniors that you're dealing with. Start being curious about them. Where did they live? Where did they grow up? Start being curious about life, about people, because all that continues to go back in your bank, which is the brain. So and it makes you sensitive to surroundings, embracing things, taking in, being a sponge. There are many things you can do. Yeah. So that, because what you shouldn't be is that don't have too many guards on if you want to be a storyteller. Keep your guards down.
Sure. Joy, would you like to add to that?
I think fabulous the way Sonal articulated it, so powerful and so emotional. Very nice. I guess the advice you give to all good writers is read good writers. So watch good stories, read good books, read good stories, immerse yourself. There's so much. Sorry for my language, but there's so much crap content out there as well, and that's the big challenge with how much content now exists, right? It's the choices that you make and what you do with your time. Because you can watch anything and the whole day is gone watching YouTube, or you can binge anything on Netflix or any other OTT platform. And so really just being very aware of how you're spending your time, the kind of quality of stuff that you're putting in. It's like your mind is like your body. It's like what we watch, what we eat. So fill it with things that are good and that will inspire you and that will in some ways nourish you, so that you can then then sort of, because it's really easy to get lost and get drowned in the nonsense also that exists outside now on the internet and everywhere. So my only thing also would be, other than all the wonderful points that Sonal already covered, I would say there is a certain craft to storytelling as well. And it isn't just this sort of, oh, let's imagine and, beautiful, but it's about showing up and putting in the work and learning the science or the craft behind storytelling. So, there's a million, you can learn anything on YouTube now. You can learn how to code. You can, there's some wonderful channels, you can search for them. And, the 8 arcs, the 8 circles of storytelling, or the 3 acts, or how to build a character. Like, this is hard work. This is tedious craft. It isn't just, I came up with this idea, you need to polish it and re-edit it and rewrite it. And that takes commitment and patience. So I would just say, don't give that up. And then just, because a lot of people do this, right? They have this awesome idea for a book, and then you never write it. And it's 10 years.
Absolutely.
So
That's
yeah.
very, very important point. That the hard work cannot be denied.
Wonderful. Absolutely.
But the
so
good thing is, if you're genuinely passionate about it, that hard work won't seem like hard work. That's the best part. So
That's true.
that gives you hope.
Bhaskar, you do so much storytelling as well.
So I think both of you said wrapped this up really well. I just want to add one last point, and that is, show your work to people, get feedback. I think that's very important, and don't be disheartened by critical feedback. I think it helps you grow. It helps you mature as a content creator, and whatever form of content you're creating, whether you're writing or you're doing photography or you're doing editing, whatever you're doing, whatever is even if you're doing painting, whatever is your craft of choice, I would say show it to people. Do not be afraid to put it out there. Use every feedback as a learning mechanism. And I love the point about, the mind being a bank. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think we are really running short of our time. Thank you so much, Juhi, Sonal, and Bhaskar, and of course Tarun, who had to leave. I mean, you spent so much of time with us. Valuable insights, valuable lessons for students, and I think something very inspiring is what I would put it, and very thoughtful. So in fact, we would look forward to deeper engagements with each of you in days to come. Now I quickly hand over to Anvesha Chaudhary, who heads our entire CIT, and along with her team, she was working day and night for these 4 fantastic days of Comvisage 2020. Anvesha, over to you.
Thank you, sir. I'm sorry, speakers. I'm first of all a little starstruck, and second of all very overwhelmed right now. Ending this summit. So I would like to take this opportunity to thank all of our panelists, Tarun sir, who's unfortunately had to drop off early, but Juhi ma'am, Bhaskar sir, Sonal sir. So thankful. You guys have been so gracious. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank our director, Ruchi ma'am, deputy director, Munmun ma'am, faculty mentor, Nilesh sir, and the entire faculty of SIMC for being so supportive, along with Josraj sir for being an amazing moderator. A very special mention to the background that goes on. We tend to overlook it sometimes, but that's where the magic happens, and we almost lose them in the spotlight because of the people out front. So I take this opportunity to thank our admin team working day in and day out to make our timetable and our schedule so accommodating. So thank you, Sujata ma'am, for that. Our IT team, I think everyone would agree that I have made them, I have made them not sleep at night because of the amount I have pushed them to make sure that everything goes well. So Vishwas sir, a heartfelt thank you from the entire CIT team. I also take this opportunity to mention the pillars of Comvisage 2020, the entire student fraternity of SIMC and the council, Vansh and Alex, our president and vice president of the council. And the entire student team, the branding team, the creatives team that has worked day in and day out with us to make this a success. And none but, I cannot not mention, last but not the least, my entire corporate interface team, the 23 stars that I have in my team. Thank you so much, guys. It has been such a privilege to work with you all, and hopefully in a couple of months when we graduate, we get to work with each other once again. The unconditional support that we have received from all of you has been a truly blessed experience, and thank you once again, Sonal sir, Juhi ma'am, and Bhaskar sir, for being here and bearing with my super emotional closing.
Thank you. You've been great, Anvisha.
Thank you so much.
Thank you to the entire SIMC
Thank
team.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's such a pleasure.
Absolutely. Wonderful.
You all have just been so gracious with your time, with your inputs, and the way you have engaged. So very grateful for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruchi.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ruchi.
Thank you, Nilesh. Thank you, Joss.
Thank you, Nilesh.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Joss.
Thank you,
to the
Bhaskar.
entire
Thank you,
SIMC team.
Sonal. Thank you, Juhi. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye, Juhi. Bye, Sonal.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Take care.
Bye, Sonal. Bye, Bhaskar.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, audience. Thank you for being with us. It has been an amazing 4 days, and sorry, I am a little emotional.